property to make certain something isn't going on. So that wasn't even done. And on top of that, the man is yelling, screaming, hollering that he's obviously in pain. They're dragging his body over. And then one of the officers, literally, I didn't hear anybody speak about this, but if you see on the camera, one of the officers literally throws the bird up and apparently maneuver with his hand to the public. So
Now, I'm going to defend the officers because once in a while they deserve defense. They should be allowed to throw the bird up. But again, what does that say about professionalism? What does that say about standing a degree or two above the criminals we're expecting you to arrest? Throwing rocks back at protesters. What does that say? It's the goddamn video game generation, I'm telling you. It's all about fuck them, us only. Fuck them, us only. Your guy loses, my guy wins.
Some problems with that as well.
That's what it is.
Right. Well, I want to ask you also because, you know, we were talking about the pursuit part of it. They pursued him because he made eye contact.
Right.
But then after that, when they caught him, when they caught up with him, because apparently there wasn't a fight, there wasn't an altercation there, at least that's what the police are saying. When they caught up with him, they searched him and he had a switchblade on him. He had a knife on him. To the best of your knowledge, is that a crime? Is that a reason to arrest him? Because I'm still trying to understand how he went from running from police and they ended up catching up with him and then they take him into custody. Why even arrest him?
Well, again, that's the whole question here. I mean, it's the police tactics there in Baltimore. I worked with law enforcement officials about 10 years ago, maybe even less than that, about the same problems that they were having over there in Baltimore. These were actually black cops.
This guy is a former U.S. Marshal.
Was saying they themselves were dealing with all kinds of harassment from the white officers. So the problem is, again, here is, what was the probable cause? Why did they stop this man? Then you run him down, and then you say he has a knife on him after the man has been injured. There's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of things to be brought out. I know one of the things that we've observed and I've seen over the years, and sort of that policeman's code, always make sure you have some type of, and I know people don't want to hear this, but this was in the code of conduct with police behind the blue wall of silence. Make sure you have something there to protect yourself. Throw it down if you need to. I don't know if that's what happened here or not, but it's just...
Now, I feel mixed on this. First of all, it is not right to assume every police officer is carrying something to plant on you in order to protect him or herself if necessary. Yet this is fucking alarming. And if this is going on with your average police force, this shit needs to stop. And there needs to be a way to make sure it stays stopped. I don't know how to do it. Maybe stop and frisk inside the goddamn department before they leave. But something's got to give. I heard on NPR earlier they were saying maybe a good idea for police officers is have them do some kind of internship first and have a peer-reviewed acceptance into the force. Then again, if there's a code of silence and a code of illegal behavior to protect yourself from the laws that you're supposed to be responsible for enforcing, what the fuck good is that going to do? That's foxes indoctrinating foxes into the henhouse.
It's kind of strange that all of a sudden this knife comes up when the knife wasn't the reason why they chased him.
Right. It seemed to have nothing to do with it. It was almost secondary. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is the fact that early on, when the police commissioner was talking about this, he said that Gray was arrested without incident. And yet you have a young man who clearly on the video that was taken on cell phones.
Yeah, I need to pause this because Stabby brought up a good point. There is actually good news coming out of this. Like, for example, there are black people showing up to protect police from rioters. This is actually happening. You can look it up. There are people showing up, black and white, to help businesses clean up the streets. And you have to remember that 90 to 97% of the people out there are peaceful. You've got that very small group that's getting ugly. But also, I don't blame that fucking group. I don't really see the point in looting because that hurts your cause. I don't see the point in attacking innocent whites, even though you may feel that's just, and maybe it is, since you were an innocent black that got attacked. I get it. But it's not going to help you because you want to gain worldwide support for your cause. And if you stay cool and keep your head on and the world keeps seeing these videos, you're going to get that worldwide support. But if you act like animals, you're going to get the cage. It's the way it's always gone. That's the way it's always going to go. All I hope to see is that cops that act like animals also get
is injured. Clearly, he's in pain.
That's right.
He's taken into custody. He soon goes into a coma and then shortly afterward dies. How can you say that he was arrested without incident? What is the public supposed to make of that kind of a statement?
That's right, and that brings into question because we're sitting right there watching the video where we can see the man is injured, we can see he's in pain, He can hardly use his legs. They're saying that, hey, well, when he got up on the wagon, the back of the police wagon,
Peace out, guy.
he appeared to be standing. We're not medical doctors. We don't know. His back could have been severely damaged then. I know one of the techniques that a lot of officers use when they jump out on these guys is the first thing you do is you throw your knee into that back as hard as you can, into that neck. They press that head down onto the ground. We look at what happened with Eric Garden up in New York. When we look at the man that was, I think was out in Arizona, we saw how the police was mashing his head into the ground. It's always this sort of technique of going for that head and that neck and that back. That is something that I have seen in law enforcement and dragnet operations that I've operated around the country. That I've seen officers do that often, especially with young black men.
I can't remember my crack.
Yeah, well, and the last thing I want to ask you about, Matthew, before you go, though, is the question about the neck. A lot of people are asking over and over, even with the knee into the back, how do you have a neck injury that severe? Quickly, what would you say about that?
Well, I mean, again, it's according to the type of prep. You jump on that person, if it's a small person, less weight, and you throw all of your pressure into that knee and you catch him in that back in the right spot, I believe you can definitely do some severe damage. Even if it wasn't to the extent that what it was finally when they put him in that van and all the other movement. That's why in football players and everywhere else, when you have athletic injuries, the first thing they do is they control that neck. They put you in a brace. They make sure you are stable. You don't move anymore because you can definitely bring more injury to an individual. If that vehicle, why did they stop? We got this sort of broad brush of the officers stopping several places, not bringing him emergency equipment, not bringing him to check him out. There's some real law enforcement problems with this situation here.
All right. Well, Matthew Fogg, retired U.S. Marshal, thank you so much for your insight on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, retired U.S. Marshal. I think that's pretty obvious, Matthew. We know there are law enforcement problems. Unfortunately, we've been having this discussion for a couple of 100 years. So what's going to change today? Stabby brought up a point in the chat room, as he often does. He's got a bad habit of that. First of all, Jeb, are you talking about Jeb Bush guy with his fart smell? I didn't know you got that close to him, and I didn't know he was into coon hunting. But, tell him good luck in the campaign and all. Stabby brought up a point about the speed of online media. One thing we're going to have to train ourselves to do in America, and this has to be taught in the home to children so that they grow up understanding this, not only critical thinking, which should be fucking forced education by the 5th grade, and I don't know if it is, I don't think it is, but also not to react too quickly, because oftentimes the initial report on anything is going to be partially false. And people have emotional, knee-jerk reactions, and you need to wait. Just wait. Just give it a little bit. Give it a few days for some details to come out, because you can remember in situations like the Missouri one, it turns out that guy wasn't hands up, don't shoot. That's what the Justice Department report said. He basically wrestled with the officer, and once you put your hands on an officer and that officer hasn't done anything to you, I give the officer full rights to shoot your ass. That's the way I feel about it. Having said that, I would encourage black people all over this country to arm themselves, just like they said in Detroit, arm yourselves, because you're being targeted, and you may find yourself needing to defend yourself against police. That is a shame. That is a shame. Serve and protect my ass. We're going to have to force serve and protect. You're not going to get it nicely. I'm sorry that's true, but it is. You can only deal with dick-headed bullies by being a dick-headed bully back. What a shame. What a shame. I really thought we were moving ahead. TED Talks. I thought we were moving ahead. We're not moving ahead. In fact, with the increasing population and with the problems that food and water and climate change is going to bring in the next couple 100 years, I think we're fucked. We got to get some people off of this rock quickly and go fuck up some other rocks, or we're not going to make it as a species. Do we need to? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe George Carlin was right. We are a fucking waste. We just consume and move, kill each other if it doesn't fit our perfect model of thinking and behavior, kill each other, consume and move. What good are we doing for anybody? All we're doing is existing. That's all humans have managed to do. And maybe that's a major accomplishment, considering that nature was out to kill us at every corner where we weren't out to kill ourselves. But what are we accomplishing? Armed black people will not help anything? Well, you can tell that to the unarmed black man who's homeless down in Florida, getting the shit kicked out of him, where they made a law where you can now defend yourself from police legally if the brutality has gone out of hand. I mean, George Norrie time soon. Can't blame you there anywhere. Swedish cop stopped New York City subway assault. Well, maybe we should all move to Sweden. Fuck it. You know? I mean, I hear people bragging about how in England there's hardly any murders, but because guns are illegal, and I don't know if I like that. It feels, an unarmed populace sounds foreign to me, mainly because it is. But what good is an armed populace if they can't defend themselves? And they can't. If you're an American now and you're armed and the police decide to brutally beat you and you pull out your gun, you're going to be shot to death. I mean, what defense do you have against these animalistic police? I don't know. I don't know what to do about that. All I can think of is, you know what the one decent solution would be? Not only police wearing body cameras around, but if you're going out on the street, the technology is getting so cheap, you ought to have your own audio and video running to a remote server where if they crush the camera, it's still going to have whatever it captured before it was crushed on it, that is available to be seen by the public through like a Google search. Why not? I mean, you can buy these goddamn key fob cameras now that record audio and video. I've got several of them here that I use with my motorcycle helmet when I'm on my scooter. I mean, they cost like $5. So it's not unheard of to be able to carry this at all times with you, but to remember to turn it on. And then there's privacy issues if you go in someone's house, you know, because of the wiretapping laws that get kind of crazy. How do we stop this? How do we encourage police to do what they vowed to do? How do we make it not possible for police to lose their temper and beat somebody half to death because they didn't comply with an order immediately? I don't know. I just know that if I were black right now, I would definitely feel targeted. I would not trust any interaction with a cop without having audio and video rolling. I mean that sincerely. And frankly, the way I'm seeing it now, good cops aside, I'm recording every interaction I have with police, regardless of when or where it is. I don't know how it should protect yourself. And I think the idea is, the real solution is get that shit on a remote server, because they will. Did you guys see the video? This happened like 4 days ago, 5 days ago maybe. This lady was recording when they were busting some dudes down in the hood. Cop walks up, takes her camera, and slams it. Luckily, somebody across the street was also filming and caught that. It just slams it on the ground. So it does no good to record if they're just going to stomp your cameras into pieces. So you got to have that shit going to a remote server that is protected. The only way I can see to do it. Illegal to record police in Chicago. There are some issues with state laws. It's about half the states right now, if I remember correctly, in which you have to be careful. First of all, with video, you cannot film where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. So you have that law. Okay, that means in someone's house, essentially. Also, there are wiretapping laws, and these are where they get tricky. You have single-party and two-party states, and all-party states. And Virginia, where I live, happens to be a single-party state, meaning if you're going to record audio, it says nothing about video. If you're going to record audio, at least one party in the conversation must know about it. So in other words, in Virginia, I can't go set up a recording device at where I know there's going to be a meeting and leave, and then come back and get it later. But if I'm there at the meeting, I can record all day long because I'm there and I know that it's recording. I don't have to tell anybody else. That goes for phone calls as well. Now, in some states, it takes at least two. It's both parties in the conversation, or all parties in the conversation have to know of and approve of the audio portion of it. Now, these wiretapping laws are getting kind of outdated considering what's going on today. And there is legislation in place now in many of these states to make it legal. I think people are pretty pro film the cops in public. They're pretty pro that, because it kind of goes along with freedom of speech, and, you know, you're doing a public service, you need to be publicly recorded and not be all fucking defensive over it. Like, what are you hiding if you have to be defensive over performing your public duty? I don't think cops are liking this. They're not liking it because now there's added pressure on them. And I know there was already pressure on them, but I shouldn't have to feel guilty that we're forcing you to do the job you said you would do fairly and justly. I'm not feeling guilty about that. Do the fucking job right, and there won't be any reason for recording. But there is a reason, because the job's not getting done right. And maybe it's only 1% of cops. Maybe it's 7% of cops. Maybe it's 14% of cops. But some percentage of the police out there don't give a fuck who you are. As long as you're black, you're not going to be treated the same as white. And as long as you're a suspect, you're not going to be treated the same as a friend or family member. Fucking assholes, some of them. Just dicks. Stabby says, if I say do not record me, you better fucking not.